I want to throw a question out to, well, I'll throw it out to any of you. I was thinking John and Adrian, but if as we're having this conversation about what's available and how to learn about what's available in terms of public support for public health agencies, is there specific funding or partnership opportunity within each of the maybe problematic areas that we identified from the outset of the conversation? So looking back on, where we see room for improvement in terms of our public health emergency response, we pointed to manufacturing and distribution, we pointed to funding, we pointed to supply chain issues. Do those specific challenges or problems play into where I go in my search for support to solve these problems? Adrian, your thoughts on that? Like supply chain issues, perhaps. Am I more likely to find support in one place or another to address supply chain issues? I mean, obviously, it's a global problem, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's well, first of all, it's an interesting question, because I think our perspective on this one would be that there's probably more funding focus and streams around the R&D element of our industry, and less so around manufacturing, distribution, and supply chain. I would suggest that we need to balance that a little bit more, because without that continuity from R&D and into manufacturing, distribution, supply chain, it doesn't get to the patient. So I think, certainly our experience in the UK is there's probably a greater entry into research and development. I think the other part of the question, we found that you need to work at finding the right place in government, in public entities, and we're quite positive in the UK in that we have an Office for Life Sciences, and they tend to be the enabler to point us as a small organization to the right departments in government and in public health. So I would certainly say we benefited from close association with that Office for Life Science, and maybe there's a similar sort of arrangement in the US.
Yeah, John and/or Jeff, would you care to weigh in on that? Like, what maybe some of the resources you're aware of that might be, I don't know, discipline specific, if you will?
I guess one thing I would just point out is tying back to the manufacturing capacity, I think there really is more of a need for a private sector solution for growing the manufacturing section, and it's coming. Largely, I think a lot of it's just that the industry is in a period of transition as we transition to more larger molecule biologic drugs, and away from the smaller molecule drugs. There's a need to do more of that manufacturing in a resilient, adaptive, flexible fashion, and to have a lot of that. And I think the lack of capacity in our manufacturing sector overall right now is kind of exposed through the pandemic. So we're already starting to see a lot more activity in the private market towards building manufacturing capacity. I think it was Dr. Peter Marks that said this was one of the things that keeps him up at night, this lack of manufacturing capacity. And hopefully, as we start transitioning towards more personalized medicine, cell therapies, things of that nature, a lot more of that infrastructure is going to come online. Because I think it was pretty clear that we didn't have all of that infrastructure where we needed it when we needed it.
Yeah, and I'd actually like to agree with John on that. Manufacturing capacity is a huge issue right now, both commercial scale and smaller scale manufacturing for clinical trials. And that was really the main impetus between us forming our own manufacturing subsidiary, Scorpion Biological Services, where we'll be focused on clinical trial manufacturing of large molecules. So this is set to open in mid-year, and we really look forward to being able to service the needs of companies that really need this capacity.